Good morning. Whether you are participating online or here in person, we say welcome home to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Becky Gregory, and I'm so glad you're here. For our guests, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Live Oak weekly newsletter. It's where you can find out everything that's happening here. There's a link on our homepage. Thanks to all for continuing yet another week to follow the current guidelines for our in-person service so we can provide as safe an environment as possible during what remains a challenging time. Masking is mandatory inside for everyone over age 2. When weather permits, like today, we have our worship service outdoors and live streamed. On days with inclement weather, the service will only be offered via live stream in order to protect our worship volunteers and staff. And now, here and at your home, let us light our chalices. We light this chalice to honor our work, to celebrate our community, and to bring hope and determination to our mission in the wider world. Our opening hymn is Morning Has Broken. If you're at home with your hymnal, it's
Good morning, I'm Reverend Joanna. Good morning, Reverend Joanna. Today is a precious gift. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And I want to take a moment to extend a very special welcome to everyone who is visiting us here or at home for the first time. Rather than gathering because we all have the same beliefs, we are an intentional community that is gathered around our shared promise to support each other's individual spiritual journeys. We are also intentional about bringing all ages together. In today's world, that often doesn't just happen organically, but we think that it's important to have an adult friend ask a child or a youth how they did on that science test that they were worried about, or for a 30-year-old and a 70-year-old to chat about life after the service or when they're working on a project together. Though we do not require everyone to share the same beliefs, you'll still find that many of us have many values in common. We believe in science, reason, the equality of all, and the need for equity. We know that Black Lives Matter, we value reproductive justice, and we celebrate the LGBTQIA+ community. We work to make love the doctrine of our lives and to put it in action through service in this church and out in the world. So that's a little bit about us. I hope that after the service you can stay and chat and let us know a little bit more about you. May we celebrate the promises and the possibilities of this day together. And every week when we gather, we share pieces of our lives with each other. We share our sorrows so that we may offer comfort to one another. and we share our joys so that we may celebrate together. And if you are watching this online, please right now share any joys or sorrows that you are carrying in the chat box. In this religious community, we hold with reverence the knowledge that each week a multitude of different emotions and experiences are brought together into this place. One of us may be celebrating while one is weeping. One may be filled with determination while another is filled with despair. This mosaic of different experiences is holy, and we honor all with our witness. Our big idea today, y'all hear me okay? Okay, there we go. Our big idea today is called Joseph Tuckerman's Revolution. This is by Janine Grossmeyer. On a cold January day in 1778, while the United States was still fighting its war of independence against Great Britain, a baby boy was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and his parents named him Joseph. What will he be when he grows up, wondered his father. A lawyer, a soldier, a merchant? He might choose to be any of those, said his mother. We must wait and see. 16 years later, his parents got their answer. Joseph decided to become a minister. He went to Harvard College, but he didn't do very good at school. You should study harder, said his roommate, whose name happened to be William Ellery Channing, and whom many of us know as the father of American Unitarianism. How would you like that, having that person, no pressure, having that person as your roommate? It's an important job, leading a church and helping people. Joseph knew it was important, but he didn't want to study all the time. Well, what do you want? Asked his roommate. I want to learn, but not just from books, Joseph said. So he would talk with people and go out on walks, and he did study his books from some of the time. Eventually, both he and his roommate both finished at Harvard and became ministers. He served at a small town as their minister for many years, but then he moved to Boston, and he started doing something very different. In 1826, Boston had many sailors and factory workers, and there were also new immigrants coming in from many different nations and farmers who had come to Boston from the countryside, and almost all of them were poor. Their jobs, if they had them, did not pay very much. Many people could not afford enough food to eat. They couldn't afford to buy fuel to cook with or to keep warm. They couldn't afford shoes or clothes for themselves or their children. Joseph's college roommate, who was now the Reverend William Ellery Channing, had just helped to create the American Unitarian Association. An important belief of the Unitarian religion is to do service by helping people. And so the association hired Joseph Tuckerman as their minister at large in Boston to work with all of these people. Well, first, Joseph followed his roommate's advice from all those years ago. He studied books. He learned what other religious organizations had done to help poor people, what had worked, what had not. He learned what governments had done, what had worked, what had not. And then he listened to what rich people in Boston had to say about poor people. People are poor because they are lazy, said one man, and they are all thieves. They're poor because they drink too much alcohol, said another person. If we give them money, they'll just spend it to buy more to drink. Joseph knew that he needed more information about how to help the people. So he walked up and down the streets of Boston and along its waterfront and talked to the people themselves. What do you need? Food, they would answer. Or sometimes clothes, blankets, shoes, medicine, a crutch for their brother who lost his leg in a factory accident, wood to burn, to keep warm and cook, or even a stove to cook on and a pot to cook in. They needed almost everything. Joseph tried to bring them what they asked for. "Thank you," they said, "and thank you for asking. No one ever asks us what we need. They give us what they think we need instead." So Joseph Tuckerman listened some more. He made relationships. He heard stories of fathers who had gotten hurt at work and died, for there was no money for a doctor. And then the families had been told to leave their homes because there was no money for rent. He heard stories of children 4 and 5 years old working long hours every day, and of old people left all alone. Sure, he heard some stories of people stealing or drinking too much alcohol. But Joseph Tuckerman learned that mostly the poor people stole because they were hungry, and he believed drinking too much was a sickness, not a sin. And at that time, let me add, that was a really novel idea. Most importantly, he believed that everybody had a need, regardless of their income, and everyone needed help. Helping hundreds of poor people was a service that could use many hands. Joseph was glad to work with friends, such as other ministers and congregations in Boston. In 1834, Joseph and the American Unitarian Association started an organization called the Benevolent Fraternity. The Ben Frat, that was its nickname, helped the churches work together so each neighborhood in Boston had a place for people to get food and clothes. As the years went by, the Ben Frat provided more than food and clothes. The Ben Frat listened to what people said they needed to help themselves. Its volunteers offered schools for the children, summer camps away from the city, and 5 chapels where people could worship on Sundays. Joseph Tuckerman died in 1840, and he was only 62 years old, but his social service lives on. Boston still has the Ben Frat, although now it's called the UU Urban Ministry. And Joseph Tuckerman's ideas of treating everyone with respect, of seeing alcoholism as a disease, and of accepting our responsibility to stop poverty are shared and acted on by people all around the world. And within our association, Joseph Tuckerman is considered to be the first community minister.
Every week we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity, combining our resources to support the ministries of this church. Part of our mission is to empower dreams, and this Sunday we will be sharing the offering with Any Baby Can to help empower their dreams, to strengthen families by offering a wide range of services for parents and children. If you wish, you may go to liveoakuu.org to donate or place a check in the green offering box after the service. Our offertory music today is "I Cannot Stay Here by Myself, A Slave's Lament" by Hal.
Stay here by myself.
This is the church, and this is the steeple. Open the doors and see all the people. Or come outdoors and see all the people. Have you ever had one of those moments where the way that you saw something, the way that you thought about something just changed in an instant? Completely changed, and you knew that there was no going back to seeing it the way you used to see it? I remember when it happened to me, and it was about the whole idea of what church meant and how you do church. I was in seminary, no surprise, but it wasn't in a class. It was, I was just chatting with a professor, Dr. Gustafson, before a class. You know, I was in seminary preparing to become a parish minister, you know, learning about theology and pastoral care and preaching and all of those things. Things that, frankly, clergy have been studying for thousands of years, learning how to do that. Kind of an idea that we all had of what it would look like. Dr. Gustafson said that there was this movement called the Missional movement. And it was people who had a different idea of what church meant and a different idea of how to do church. He said that for these people, they believed that here in the United States, that we're already living in a foreign culture, a culture that is foreign to our values, a consumerist, capitalist culture. And so what is needed is not for us to go to some other country, but for us to be missionaries right here in this culture. And he said, and these people, even your idea of what a missionary is, that it was a very different idea. That they weren't in it for converting people. They were in it for the reasons that so many people, like Joseph Tuckerman, had done this work, to go into a community and see what the needs were and to organize people around those needs. This was the missional movement. And so if you had that, then the whole way that you would do church would follow this idea of living out of a mission. This was coming from the Christian church, so they used the term Missio Dei, mission of God. And so everything in the church, rather than being oriented around trying to get everyone to the church as if that were the final destination, instead you would see church as a sending place. A place that you would come, kind of like a refilling station, right? A place where you would come to be refilled, maybe to get some maps. I was in seminary before GPS was on all of our phones. The idea, to me, it so resonated, but it also rocked me. I literally can remember dropping my hands to the sides of the chair that I was sitting on and grabbing on, because for a moment I felt so dizzy and disoriented, I was afraid I literally might fall off of my chair. After that, I started reading everything that I could about this whole thing called missional church, or as they often called it, missional living. Some of the things that I read, because again, this was something that was happening in the Christian church, I would have to use, my Universal Theological Translator. For those of you who are new to Live Oak, we talk about this quite a bit. We are lucky, we are blessed in that we get to draw wisdom from wherever we can find it. Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Beyonce, Battlestar Galactica. But it means that we are the ones that have the responsibility of doing the translating for ourselves. We shouldn't expect others, right, to do that, let's translate for the Unitarian Universalist out there. It's what we do. And so you use your universal translator, and you want to get to what is the main meaning. So if you need to swap out certain words that don't work for you, you can do that. Maybe the word God doesn't really work for you, so you swap in the word love. or spirit of life. For me, whenever I see kingdom of God or kingdom of heaven, I just automatically read that as beloved community. Or, this is a newer one I'm experimenting with, kingdom of God. The idea that we look at all people as being our kin. So like I said, reading all of these books, I had to do a little bit of translating. Here's a quote from Missional Communities, one of my favorite books about missionalism by Reggie McNeil, with my substitutions. When we finally realize that our existence is to improve the world and not escape it, we will grasp that the church is not the point. The beloved community is the point. The beloved community is not restricted to church activity. The beloved community manifests itself in the world, invading enemy territory to liberate those held captive by a life-diminishing kingdom of darkness. I realize for those of you who grew up evangelical, hearing something like enemy territory, you've heard the word enemy before, it may make you a little twitchy, but really think about it. Think about this culture that we are living in that says that everything should be about you producing and your work and taking time for yourself, for beauty, for art, unless it can make a profit. Where's the value in that? I think that we are in enemy territory. We do have work to do there. Now, the more I read, and I didn't just read, like I was going to conferences and all this, Shane Claiborne and Reggie McNeil and others, I kept hearing some messages that I did not have to translate. I was kind of like, really? This is an issue? But again, remember, the messages about being missional, the majority of churches in the United States are Christian, and so they were oriented toward those who were coming out of traditional Christianity, especially Protestant, even evangelical Christianity. And so there were these messages that was for them, and I was like, I think we're already there. Things like missional theology champions a strategy of engaging the culture rather than retreating from it. The gospel involves more than personal salvation. The good news is that God wants to bring restoration to all things, meaning the gospel has implications for communities as well as individuals, for societal issues as well as individual relationships. They were trying to communicate that it's not about converting people to a certain pattern of belief, that if you meet an atheist, you don't have to change them. And the more I would hear these speakers, they would be extending that to the LGBTQ community and to being anti-racist. And this, for some people, as you can imagine, was a pretty revolutionary idea. I talked to one person at one of these conferences, and it was someone who actually knew what Unitarian Universalists, what we were. And I said, it kind of sounds like you're trying to tell these people, be more like the Unitarians. And he said, you're not wrong. He also said, but if y'all are already a step ahead there, then what else are you going to do? Because to whom much is given, much is expected. Most of the stuff, though, that I was reading, it transcended any theological differences. Probably because the big religion of our country, the culture that we live in, the one of consumerism, that's a religion that all of us, whether we chose it or not, we have been thrust into. Here's some quotes that I think apply to no matter what your religious beliefs are. Reggie McNeil from Missional Communities. A missional church casts its lot with the world. A church that thinks it is doing well in a city that is doing poorly is fooling itself. a radical recalibration of priorities is in order for many congregations. Michael Frost and Alan Hirsch in The Faith of Leap, Embracing a Theology of Risk, Adventure, and Courage, says, in this cultural script, the culture that we are living in, the vision of the good life is reduced to being a highly brand-aware, conspicuous consumer rather than being someone whose life should count for something, who makes a difference in the world. Reggie McNeil, getting to shared mission typically requires some coaching on a series of questions that help identify their missional impulses. 2 questions that guide the thinking at St. Thomas, Philly, a missional church, are who do you want to be good news to, and what would good news look like? The leaders help people conduct what they call passion audits to get at this. They ask people about their heart's desires. What excites your heart? What excites your heart? But they also ask people about their holy discontent. What breaks your heart? And Frost and Hirsch say, we are the people of the ultimate quest. We are on a wild and sometimes dangerous adventure to save the world. This is our story and our song. So what does it mean to be a missional church? Well, once you strip away the different theologies, it comes down to 3 elements. A missional church, as opposed to what we usually think of, which is an attractional church. A missional church is incarnational, positional, and relational. So the incarnational, this is already a part of our religion. This is our theology. James Luther Adams, the prophet, the theologian for Unitarian Universalism from the 20th century, talked about the core elements of Unitarian Universalism. And he said that part of that is that we reject the immaculate conception of virtue. He said, we know that our values have to take form. They have to take action. We have to incarnate them in the world. Any beliefs, any values that we have, if all they are is an idea in our head, then they are meaningless. We have to actually put them into action. If you believe in love, love has no hands or feet or voice of itself. We are the ones who have to be the hands and feet of love and of justice and the things that we hold to be dear. So that's one big part of missional church. And again, you can, if you take this out of just Unitarian Universalists, because this is one that we should be frankly like, yep, already there, may need to do a little bit of more action, but we have said for decades, right, we are the religion of deeds, not creeds. But when you expand it beyond Unitarian Universalism, so many churches, right, that they say that creed every day, they believe that what you believe is the most important thing. This is a radical idea. So incarnational. The second element is that it is positional. We do not have a church where we come on Sundays and then like we go to another country to do the work, or even we go across town to do the work. Positional means that we look where we are positioned. We get to know the people there. And like Joseph Tuckerman, we go out to try to find out what are the needs in this area. We've been talking quite a bit about that for a while, haven't we, Wayne? Like one of the things that you have heard from us, you've heard from Wayne, heard from me, you're going to keep hearing about it because I think that it is such an unmet need in our area, is the people who fall in the categorization of Alice, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. When we think about poverty, when we think about need, we so often think right about the homeless people under the bridge. Let me tell you, all around here and here, there is such significant need. The people who make too much to qualify for the poverty level programs, but especially, like, who's gone to the grocery store lately, right? The prices in our area of groceries, of housing, are all just going to the sky. Meanwhile, wages, even with the so-called labor shortage, are staying flat. And so people are having to make difficult decisions about where they're going to put their money. I mean, and again, part of being locational goes with the third part, which is being relational. We're not serving them. We are all serving together. Because it's all of us. If it's not you today, it could be you tomorrow. It could be you in the past. I remember my dad talking about the stress that he and my mom had with my older siblings. They were at this one point in their life where my brother had a heart defect and my sister had dental problems so much, like they were afraid of, her teeth were going to be like growing out through her nose, and they had to make the decision of, okay, we only have the money to take care of one of these things. That's happening right now. What can we do about it? Being relational means that, again, it's not going across town and feeding the hungry and then we come back to our nice, safe homes. It's we actually create relationships with people. There is one phrase that is used in missionalism, and I haven't found as punchy a interpretation because it uses the word God. I realize that some people that just kind of leaves them cold. But please try and get to the deeper meaning of this, which is to be missional means to look for where God is already at work in the neighborhood and to join in with that. We don't have to create new programs. There are already things out there that we can do, and we are as a church. I feel like we have been dipping our toes into the missional waters, and so some of this, for those of us who have been doing things like Fresh Food for All or Selfies with Santa, some of this should resonate because it's already happening. This thing of being relational when we're seeing the same people, and like with Fresh Food for All, we have people who will come because they have a need one month, and the next month they are there to try and help out. We're all working together in this. With Selfies with Santa, I have to admit, I hadn't really thought of the relational aspect of this. This is something we do once a year. We have Santa Claus who comes here and takes pictures with families. But this year, because we couldn't do it last year, COVID, this year we had people who were showing up, and they have been coming every year. This one family brought an envelope full of pictures from every single year where you could see their child growing up and a thank you. This is about being relational. So what might it look like for Live Oak to really commit itself to being a missional community? I will tell you, as happens with most people when we're in college and we're learning about inspiring things, my thoughts on this have shifted a little bit, right? When I was first learning all of this, I was like, oh yeah, like we don't need a building, we'll just move somewhere and we'll move in, and maybe we'll open up a coffee shop, and the coffee shop, it'll be one of these third places, right, community spaces, but on Sunday we'll have church. By the way, for some places, that works. I just described to you a church called Ecclesia in Houston, but part of the other thing about missional is it says, sorry, there's no easy answers here. And there's not one model that you can duplicate. You have to go into your area and find out what the needs are. I have become even more committed to a simple idea. Y'all have heard it before, and that is that the purpose of church is this is where we are gathered to strengthen our souls, and then we are sent out to strengthen the world. And I think sometimes we have people that want to pick just like one of those, like, you know, they're really into kind of the strengthening the soul part, or they're really into the strengthening the world. Both parts are important. And I think as a church, as we talk about what is it that we want to do, what is our purpose going to be in the post-pandemic church, I think we need to look at both of those. What would it take to strengthen your soul? Maybe some of it is learning, right? Learning new techniques with anti-racism, learning how to go to a school board meeting and in the very short amount of time that you have, say something that could change people's minds. But it's also about doing our own work to become stronger, to ask the spiritual questions and struggle with them. What would it take for Sunday to truly be a Sabbath for you? Coming to church, I hope. Religious education, I hope. But what would make it a Sabbath? Maybe it's a shared meal. Maybe it's coming out here, hopefully on a warmer day, and eating with people and watching our kids play. Maybe it's having a small group or a book club. Or what would make this a day that would so strengthen you that you would have the power and the energy to go out the rest of the week, going out into your own spheres of influence, whether it's coaching the soccer team or being on the PTA, going to work, but you're always living as a missionary for your values. You see, I want this for us, not just because it has the power to change the world. And I absolutely believe that it has the power to change our little corner of the world. But I firmly believe, I know that it will make your life better. Because it's all about living in alignment. And when we can break out of living aligned with the consumerist, greedy, oppressive culture that we live in, and instead we are living lives that are aligned with our deepest held values, to be anti-racist, to be open-hearted and wholehearted, and to have purpose, and to use our lives in a significant way. When your life is aligned with your values, when you are incarnating your values, there comes with that a peace and a joy that you can't get any other way. So this is the church, and this is the steeple. Open the doors, but where are the people? They're loading a grocery truck, helping folks vote, reading to a first grade class, handing out a coat. They're being the church in so many ways, and that happens on all 7 days. There is a building with a mighty fine steeple, but the church itself is all of the people. I invite you now to join with me in a period of meditation. This was written by the Reverend Hope Johnson, who sadly died in 2020, but she shaped and influenced our association in so many ways. So make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. This is We Are One. We are one. A diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. in an outdoor crowd of people kneeling. Fists are raised in solidarity for George Floyd. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, and being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. Let's hold that for just a moment in silence. Amen and blessed be. And our closing hymn is number 95, for those who are at home with a hymnal. There is more love.
Good morning. Since we have gathered here today, there will be religious education today, all ages. All adults are invited inside the building in the adult education room for a discussion on relational ethics. The high school youth group will meet at this back table, and they will begin planning the service they'll be leading for us in May. And the kindergarten through 7th graders will be meeting here, and they'll be discussing they'll be making prayer beads and discussing prayer. If you have preschoolers, they'll be out on the playground. Thank you.
Yes, that's right. Your Unitarian Universalist minister actually asked you today to consider becoming a missionary. Think about what it is that you value most in the world. How can you be the hands and the feet of those values? We have so many ways already, teaching ESL or adult basic education, helping us with Hill Country Community Ministries with Fresh Food for All, and we want to talk about getting to know our neighbors and finding what the needs of this specific community are. So yes, please go out and be a missionary this week, incarnating your values. May you go forward knowing that life is fragile and a gift, that you are lovable and loved, and you are not alone.
We extinguish this flame, but we recommit anew to carrying into our week the flame of justice and love. May we share with others the courage and the strength we find here.